A debate is contentious. A debate is about winning. A conversation is about truth-seeking together. When I saw the debate devolve into personal attacks, I felt like that was a loss for me as a viewer. Hey guys, I want to talk about this new Netflix documentary called The Game Changers. It's all the buzz in town. My patients are asking about it. You're asking about it. So I decided that I'm going to make a video on the topic, but instead of overloading you with a ton of information, I decided to source 3 of the most popular questions that you have and 3 of the most popular questions that my patients have. And I'm going to answer them within this video. Full disclosure, not only did I watch the entire documentary, but I also watched both episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast. The first where he had Chris Kresser on, essentially debunking the documentary, and then the second one where he brought in James Wilks from the documentary to have a debate with Chris Kresser about those qualms. That's in total about 7 hours of footage. I watched it all. I wanted to make sure I came prepared to answer all of your questions. I also want to tell you that I've actually went vegan before for 30 days, and I did it with the help of Thrive Market. Thrive Market is also the sponsor of today's video. For those of you who don't know, Thrive Market is an online marketplace that's trying to make healthy eating affordable. It's a home delivery service of quality, healthy, organic options. In fact, one of my favorite features on their website is you can organize the foods based on the diet you're following or your ethical beliefs. So if you're vegan, great, you could use them. If you're paleo, you could use them. And all you have to do is click the link down below in my description. It's thrivemarket.com/Dr. M. You could pick between 1 month, 3 month, or 12-month billing cycles. I personally love the 12-month because it's only $5 a month. If in the first 30 days you don't like it, cancel it anytime. I'm all about healthy living, and if you can eat healthy, that's gonna go a long way, especially with affordable prices like Thrive Market. All right, let's get into it. I wanna start off this video by giving you my baseline thoughts on the subject going into watching the documentary so that you can be aware of my cognitive biases. Now, we all have a bias. In fact, when I watched the debate between James and Chris on Rogan's podcast, I saw their cognitive biases showing. And I think if you're more aware of my cognitive biases and where I'm starting, my starting point is, you'll be able to make a better judgment as to whether or not the information I'm presenting you is accurate, or where it's coming from, and why I think what I do think. As a board-certified family medicine doctor who's done a lot of research on the subject, the recommendation I give most often to my patients is a whole foods, primarily plant-focused diet. Doesn't mean vegan. It means getting the majority of your calories from non-animal sources. But it also means it's okay to eat fish, meats, albeit red meat in moderation, and removing to the greatest extent possible processed meats. Now in this diet, you'll have a lot of fruits, vegetables, healthy fats like avocado, nuts, olive oil, things like that. It's actually quite close to the Mediterranean diet. We have to remember though, that nutrition advice should be really given on an individual level. So I don't recommend that to all my patients. That's sort of my general advice. And then we make little changes based on that person's body, their health, their conditions, and what they hope to achieve. So while I've never explicitly recommended the vegan diet to somebody, if a patient comes in and wants to, I make sure they do it to the best of their abilities, supplementing, blood testing, and making sure they're planning to get the right macronutrients. Let's get into my thoughts before we jump into the questions. I'm really happy this documentary was made. It's debunking a lot of the myths we've been propagating for such a long period of time. Like, we need to eat a certain amount of meat in order to put on muscle. A lot of these have been proven to be untrue, and I'm happy that this documentary is putting it out there. In fact, I'm happy that we're discussing nutrition. We're actually learning about what constitutes good research, why we're so misled with the certain headlines that we see in media. I love that we're discussing this. I mean, this video, Rogan's video, the documentary itself, all the response videos, this is all healthy debate that we need to do more and more often in nutrition so that we can raise the bar on the type of research we're doing. We can actually make a meaningful impact on the future generations with nutrition research. That being said, the science of the documentary is pretty solid. All the facts are well stated. There's sources for everything that appear on screen. I love that. In fact, in a lot of my videos, I try and put links for further reading from major organizations like WHO, CDC, or if I'm referencing a specific study, I put that study in there as well. The one thing that I will say is I do feel it was made from an activist scientist standpoint. The reason I have to make that a point is they didn't present any counter arguments. And when you're making a documentary, I think it's in the documentary's best interest if the documentary's interest is truth seeking, to put all perspectives in there, at least the most common ones, so that we can, as viewers, decide for ourselves what's real, what's not. Now, the experts that they had in the film are credible experts. They're some of the leading experts in the world. But when you only have them speaking about it and no one else from the other side of this conversation, you're leaving a void in there, and it feels like it's been done intentionally from an activist standpoint. Now, I don't want to put blame on anybody or assume why that's being done. I just think that it would have been a more complete picture had we heard from the other side of the conversation about perhaps how much meat is healthy, is no meat healthy, and sort of get a little bit more details on that. Now, James Wilks, who's the star and co-producer of the film, explicitly stated that his goal with the film wasn't to make everyone go vegan. It was to reduce the amount of animal products that they're taking. I love that goal. I think we should all be thinking about that, especially for the environment's sake. But what it feels like in watching this film and speaking to many people about it, my patients included, the vibe that everyone gets from watching it is that eating any amount of animal product is incredibly unhealthy. And we're gonna be getting into that as we move forward in this video. But I feel that if your goal was to send one message, but in reality or from a practical standpoint, you're sending a different message, I think something needs to be adjusted. When you're comparing animal food companies to tobacco companies, and we're talking about dangerous words like inflammation, cancer, and we're referencing that only in terms of animal products, you're essentially scaring people off in totality from it, at least in their minds. So we need to be really careful from not only are we presenting all the information factually, but also how is it being understood by the audience? Let's start off with the YouTube questions. The first one was the most upvoted, and it was, is it true that all protein comes from plants and that animals are just a vehicle for that? I think when we're making these types of reductionist statements, we can really get lost as to the practical value of them. Let's use a metaphor. All people were once lower forms of organisms because of evolution. So we were once bacteria. Does it mean we're technically bacteria? Not really. And the fact that a cow can eat a ton of grass and make it into a lot of protein, it does not mean that we can eat that same grass and turn it into a lot of protein. There's differences between animals and humans. So don't know what to make of that statement. I hope that answers your question. Question number 2, will going vegan give me more energy? First of all, it depends. What are you switching from? And what are you switching to? If you're switching from a very unhealthy, let's say the American standard diet, where you're eating a ton of burgers and pepperoni pizzas and things like that, and then you switch to a healthy vegan diet, you're gonna feel like you have a lot of energy. But now on the other hand, let's say you were eating already a Mediterranean diet, and now you switch to a vegan diet, but one that's unhealthy. You're eating a ton of refined carbs, processed foods that are still vegan. You're not gonna see a dramatic increase in energy. In fact, your energy levels may fall. I don't think it's a magic pill like in the documentary some of the athletes said, oh, before I was performing so horribly and now all of a sudden I have more energy. If they were eating healthy before and switched to a vegan diet, I don't know how much we can say that it was the vegan diet that caused it directly. Perhaps in individuals, we can say that, but not as a general rule. We haven't seen the evidence for that. Question number 3, how did you feel about the experiments that they showed in the film? That was probably one of my biggest issues with the film. I understand what they're going for. They're trying to debunk a lot of these myths surrounding performance and masculinity and how you can be vegan and still do well in all these aspects of your life. And that's true. But I wish they didn't resort to a lot of these examples that weren't scientifically meaningful. Like, what does it mean to see triglycerides floating in your blood? What does it mean that these 3 gentlemen didn't have the proper erections at night when they ate something else? It's not a controlled experiment. There's so many variables at play and the sample size is tiny. Like, I understand why they had to do these visual demonstrations because it works really well in the documentary. In fact, when producers call me to do morning shows or daytime talk shows, they always ask me to bring in demonstrations just like that or little experiments. But unless I can say they're scientifically valid or whatever it is I'm proving makes sense, I don't feel that I should do it because I don't want to mislead the audience by any means. All right, let's move on to the patient questions. These are the ones that are the primary questions that seemingly everyone had, the meat of the discussion, if you will. Question number 1, I'm looking to put on muscle and I want to go vegan. Can I still put on size? Absolutely yes. And I think the strength of this documentary was debunking that old myth that you couldn't be vegan and put on muscle. You absolutely can. You have to plan accordingly, supplement accordingly, making sure that you meet all of your amino acid demands. But outside of that, make sure you have a good workout routine. I'm actually gonna be showing you my workout routine in a video coming soon. Are there any health concerns with going vegan, and can we all go vegan? The vegan diet is one that's appropriate for all life stages. They said in the documentary, and I couldn't agree more with that. It's not necessarily the first diet that I reach for when I recommend it to my patients, but it absolutely can work. It's just important that it's appropriately and well planned. And I know in the Joe Rogan debate, James made a point in saying all diets need to be well planned. This is true, but the vegan diet does require more effort in that you really need to plan your protein, your supplementation, and you generally don't have to do that if you're eating an omnivorous diet. If you do happen to go vegan, but do it in an unhealthy or an unplanned way, you could actually do serious harm to your body. You can develop B12 deficiency, which will lead to anemia. You can develop other vitamin or mineral deficiencies, most notably vitamin D and calcium. And also, if you're trying to put on muscle, if you're not planning your protein sources correctly, you could also get in trouble in that way. But for most people, that shouldn't be much of a problem. And the Mac Daddy of them all, the final question, the question that so many people have asked me, the question I've even pondered after watching the documentary myself. Are meat or animal products as unhealthy as they say? And do I need to get rid of all of them to stay healthy? I rarely am so blunt in answering questions like this because there's usually a lot of nuance, but the answer is no. I think the documentary went one step too far in fear-mongering people to eliminate meat out of their diets completely. In fact, James on the Joe Rogan podcast said that, frankly, that he believes that no amount of meat is safe or healthy. I don't think that's the case. I don't think evidence has proven that to be the case. I think we just don't know enough. I think the research that we have is really flawed. We have industry-funded research, underfunded research, research that's done with questionnaires. My answer would be, if you're eating a healthy, whole foods, plant-focused diet and you eat some meat, I think that's a very healthy diet. I think eliminating meat completely is a personal choice. I don't think it's one that you normally have to make for your health, albeit nutrition is an individual thing, and if your doctor recommends that, there might be a different conversation for you. But there's one thing that I love about this documentary that I want all of us to take away from it. We should all reduce the amount of animal products we're eating. We're overeating calories as is, specifically animal products, processed animal products. We need to get this garbage out of our diet. It's one of the main reasons obesity is overflowing in the United States, in addition to refined carbs. So yes, we should lower our reliance on animal products. We should be eating more fruits and vegetables. And in fact, me doing Whole30 right now, one of the takeaways that I've gotten from this is that I should be eating more fruits and vegetables, and that I have been relying on getting all my protein specifically from animal sources. So this documentary did bring awareness to that, and I'm really proud of it for doing so. Just saying that we should remove all animal products completely, as James said, not a huge fan of that. I don't think there's evidence to back that up. I think when you compare a vegan diet to an American Standard diet, it does an amazing job of overturning illness even. But when you compare a vegan diet to someone who's otherwise healthy and omnivorous, I've never really seen evidence to show that vegan diet is superior. And the interesting part about it is most, if not all, major organizations agree with that. James made a really big deal in the podcast saying how Chris Kresser's views on nutrition were not matching scientific consensus. Well, James' views aren't matching scientific consensus. I haven't seen any guidance from the WHO or CDC to say that we should not be eating animal products altogether. I've seen that they recommend we should increase our vegetable and fruit intake, decrease our processed food, refined carbs, our red meats, our processed meats, but to say to remove all animal products, just not scientific consensus. I want to leave you with some thoughts that I had about the Joe Rogan podcast where James Wilks and Chris Kresser debated about the documentary. I know Joe Rogan framed this as a debate where Chris debunked the documentary, James saw that episode and was very upset about it, and he wanted them to sort of battle it out or duke it out with their information. I don't necessarily want to see a debate from these two gentlemen. I want to see a conversation. A debate is contentious. A debate is about winning. A conversation is about truth-seeking together. When I saw the debate devolve into personal attacks, I felt like that was a loss for me as a viewer. I think that these guys are so smart. They've done countless hours of research between them, and they can bring a lot to the conversation. And I think both of these gentlemen agreed more than they disagreed. And it didn't come off that way by the way they were talking with one another. It almost seemed like they disagreed on everything. It's not true. And I think their only real point of contention is, should you go 100% animal product free or go mostly animal product free? And I think that's such a minute difference that our research with the low quality that it is right now, I can't really tell which one of them is right. So I still say to my patients that they should eat a predominantly plant-based diet with some animal products in there, removing processed foods as much as they can. Again, huge thank you to Thrive Market for sponsoring this video. If you want to eat healthy and save some money at the same time, click that link in my description. I put together a playlist for you of all my nutrition videos, including going vegan for 30 days, so click here. And if you have any residual questions, leave them down below in the comment section, because I want to answer them.